Anybody celebrating any length of sobriety that I want to recognize? Oh, we all have today. Well, they called me about 6:15, said we would have to move our meeting over here, so had everything set up all there, so we moved it over here, and we got over here whenever we could. So we had like every long time ago, it's their house, we go by their rules, so we'll just work it out. So we be back over there tomorrow, or next Friday if nothing happens. Scott F. from New Bremen will be giving lead. Alright, tonight I didn't have a lead, but I was thinking of somebody, but that guy didn't show up, and my other friend showed up, and so that's a good lead. So I asked my friend Steve from Slina to give a lead, and without further ado, you can either stand up, Steve, or whatever you want to do.
Alright.
Introduce my friend Steve from Slina.
I thought you were going to stand up.
I am. Oh, hey. Hey, oh, man. Alright, that's it. I'm not doing it. No.
I'll kick his ass for you.
Thanks, Dwayne. I appreciate that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve S. My sobriety date's October 13th, 22. Many of you have heard my story, and some of you haven't. I recognize many faces in here, and I see some new faces, so that's good. We got a pretty good crowd tonight. Welcome to the newcomer. I'd slipped my mind already. Your name, Rick? Rick, okay. Glad that you're here. You're the most important person in the room tonight. So, I guess I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. That's what we're supposed to do. So, I was actually born in Canada, and I was born in Quebec, and my mom, my birth mom, wasn't able to care for me. She had postpartum real bad, I guess, and I've got some half brothers and sisters up there, and ended up getting put into an orphanage that was run by a bunch of nuns. And if anybody went through Catholic school or anything like that, you know how nuns can be. So then, long story short, I was adopted at the age of 2.5 by my parents in Ohio here. And came to Ohio. I got naturalized in '72, which means I became a citizen of the U.S. And when my parents picked me up, all I spoke was French. Well, childhood French. That's, a lot of it was probably baby chatter, you know. And they said I really liked the trucks going by when we were driving in the car, you know, and I would start babbling on when the trucks went by, and they couldn't understand a word I said, of course. But I had some weird habits that I picked up in the orphanage. And I would, when they got me home, I would run around on the carpet, and I would rub my head on the carpet. And I don't know, they didn't know why I did that, if I liked the static charge or just something rubbing my head or what. We have no idea where I got that from. Yeah. So, you know, and one of the other things is I used to guard my food, and I would eat like this, you know, because the other kids would try to steal my food at the orphanage. So I picked up that habit as well. But eventually those went away. But, you know, I couldn't have gotten luckier. I had great parents growing up. We had a really good life. We didn't have a lot, but my parents made sure that, you know, we had what we needed. I went to a Catholic school, IC here in Salina, through 8th grade, and I was an altar boy, and I really enjoyed it. I liked being involved with the church and everything, and I really prided myself on how much I could memorize with all the different prayers and songs, and I enjoyed working with the priests, and I really looked up to them. And when I was younger, I always said I wanted to be a priest growing up. But later on that changed pretty quickly. But so my upbringing was, you know, pretty good, pretty normal, so to say. My parents drank. Neither one of them were alcoholics. So, you know, I must have gotten that from the other half up north. my birth dad actually lived in Quebec. My birth mom lived in Montreal. And when I was around in my 20s, um, I was working for Marathon Oil Company, and I was a road warrior. And I worked it into my schedule that I could go up and actually meet my birth parents. And it was real easy in Canada because Canada has a system where everything gets registered in this system. And the parents can't come looking for the child, but the child can come looking for the parents. And it's real easy. All you do is you call a number, and they send you the paperwork, and boom, you're off and running. So I set up a meet, took my parents with me, and we went up to Montreal. And I met my birth mom. My birth dad couldn't make it because my birth mom didn't tell him in time. And of course, he had his family in Quebec, and it was a 2-hour drive. And I was only there for the weekend, so I just got to meet her. And it was strange. It was uncomfortable. Um, I remember she kept wanting to touch me. I didn't like that. Um, she was amazed at how much hair I had on my legs. Um, yeah, just weird things, little things, you know. But you know, she didn't have much. She was very poor. So we took her out to a nice dinner. Really treated her well. And my intention was, you know, just to let her know that hey, she made the right decision. Because at that point I'd been through college and graduated and had a good job. You know, everything was going well. I was drinking, but um, things in my life had gone well. And so I wanted to just reassure her that, you know, yeah, you made the right decision, and things were going okay. So so that happened, and I guess you know, growing up we went on vacations every year, once a year, and a lot of those were fishing trips. A lot of them were up to Canada, some down to Tennessee. Went to Florida quite a few times. So, you know, we had a pretty good upbringing. I had a pretty bad temper when I was a child, so I got whooped quite a bit. And I remember, for some odd reason, I sucked my thumb a little bit longer than I should have. And so my mom made me a deal, and she said, I'll quit smoking if you quit sucking your thumb. I said, okay. Well, she quit smoking, and I quit sucking my thumb, so it worked out. So that's how she quit smoking. Um, my dad, you know, he liked to party. My mom couldn't hold her liquor. She could drink 3 beers and be 3 sheets in the wind and, you know, slurring her speech. But she wasn't a big drinker. She liked to party. They had card parties and they bowled and, you know, they had their nights out and stuff like that. Um, and, you know, us kids were around that. But, you know, they weren't excessive. You know, I think I only saw my dad really drunk one time, and he was pretty sloshed. He uh, he was praising the porcelain gods and hit his nose on the toilet and busted it open. He was a mess. But that was the only time I saw him really drunk. Any other time he was just, you know, having a good time. My dad was kind of one of those guys where everybody liked him. He just had a real good personality, liked to help people, and and so, you know, I tried to adopt a lot of his personalities and stuff. But so yeah, we had pretty much everything we needed, and I remember I started drinking probably around the age of 16 is when I started really my drinking career, and mainly that was because that's when I got my driver's license, and that gave me the freedom to get a hold of beer, liquor, whatever. Back then, you know, Boone's Farm and Mad Dog was pretty popular. Um, Little Kings, you know, stuff like that. Whatever we could get our hands on, we didn't care. And we'd go out in the countryside cruising around. And back then, we would cruise up and down Main Street. We'd go up to Van Wert cruising up and down Main Street. Just wherever the party was going, you know. Back then, cruising was a big deal. And the outdoor concerts. I remember the open air concerts, open air dances, and we used to go to those all the time. And they would sell beer by the half-gallon jug, and it was cheap, and you know, you could really have a good time. And of course, I was always doing it well in excess of what I should have been doing. Um, but that's when I really started drinking, and I came out of the gate, you know, I came out of the gate an alcoholic. I never drank normal. Um, from the first time I drank to get drunk. Um, I've thought about that often, ever since I've gotten sober this last time. I always ask myself, well, like, where did I cross that line? When did I cross that line between, say, like a problem drinker to an alcoholic? And I think back, and well, maybe back, around 2004, maybe, 2016, and I keep going back and forth with it. Then I thought about it, and it's like, well, really from the beginning, I never crossed that line. I was always across that line. Because when I drank to get drunk, and that's an alcoholic. So I've been an alcoholic for I did that for 38 years, and sometimes it was weekend warrior drunks. Other times it was drinking during the week. Um, but when I was on the road, I would it was kind of boring, but I would work long days because I knew my evenings were just going to be stuck in a hotel room. I could go down in the lounge or whatever, but which I did sometimes. But other times I would just buy a six-pack and sit in my room and watch TV, drink my six-pack and go to bed. And get up in the morning and do it again. So I did that for years, and being that it is a progressive disease, my drinking did pick up, and I always had liquor in there too. It wasn't just beer. If I was in the mood, really tie one on, then I would go uptown and I'd be drinking Jack and Cokes or something like that. Because liquor's quicker. We all know that. And I remember many nights. We had a lot of bars up on Main Street back in the day, and I was fathered in on all the laws for what the age of legal drinking was. And when I was 18, I could get into the bars, and even before that, I could get beer because I could grow a mustache, and I looked like I was 18 going through the drive-throughs. So I could most of the time get beer going through the drive-through, and so accessibility was not a problem for me, Or I would get a hold of Dad's stash. He always had liquor laying around the house, so. Um, the availability was there, and in this area back in that time, there really that was the thing to do. Everybody pretty much ran in a common crowd, and that's what we did on the weekends. And then when I went to college, I came home every weekend just about. I didn't spend too many weeks up there. I went to Bowling Green. It's about a 2-hour drive, hour and 45 minutes or so. But I would come home every weekend because that's where my friends were, and we were big into playing euchre, and so we would get a crew together and play euchre, or if we had enough people, we'd play Pictionary, and we'd just sit around and get sloshed. And then if we had enough people, we'd go out as a group and invade the town and just take over, So I did that for many years, and then I started having some legal problems. I did get in trouble before the age of 18, so that wasn't on my permanent record. But I had a couple DUIs, before I was 18, and luckily those didn't show, they didn't stay on my record. But I know one was I had a headlight out driving home, and I thought I was being smart about it because I had somebody else driving the whole night, and all I had to do was drive the leg home, which was only a few miles, but state trooper pulled me over, and that was the end of that. That was my first experience, and I threw up in the police station, so that was fun. But I used to get so sick drinking liquor, and I don't know, I was one of those guys. Oh, I'm never going to drink again. I feel so crappy, And I remember going to work. I worked at Pantry Pride when it was on the west side of Salina, and I'd go in there so hungover on a Saturday or a Sunday, and I'd be back thrown up in the utility. Uh, fa- uh, uh, yeah, and A couple of times they told me, they're just like, Steve, just go home. You can't do this. So, um, yeah, I was quite the character, and I was a Jekyll and Hyde drinker too, because you never knew what version of me you were going to get at any given time. Um, and for me, it was like a light switch. I'd come out and I might have been in the greatest mood, and somebody might say or do something that would rub me the wrong way, and boom, I just would turn evil right at the drop of a dime. And that scared people. Um, you know, Even though I was a small guy, it was kind of scary to people because I was so unpredictable. But as I got older and I got through college, and like I said, I got in with Marathon Oil, and that was a great job. And I got my first DUI as an adult when I was working for Marathon. I don't know, I was probably about 25 or 26. And I had to go in and tell my boss because um, I was the I was the supervisor of our department that we did electronic repair on circuit boards, and I would train all the incoming interns from colleges and stuff. So I let him know what was going on, and he said, "Well, you know, we'll kind of turn we'll not worry about that. We'll kind of brush it under the rug, but don't let it happen again." Well, unfortunately, it did happen again, and I don't know how long it was between, maybe 5 years, and and they let me go. And that was really the first time that I got fired from a job um, that really had a lot of importance. I had a lot of good things going with that job, and at the time I was it was kind of weird because after my first DUI, it was only like a year went by, and they put me on the road and they gave me a company van to drive, and I thought that was kind of odd because it's like, really, I just got a DUI like a year ago, and you're putting me on, in a company vehicle, giving me all this responsibility with a company vehicle and expense account. You're putting me up in hotels. You're paying all my meals. Um, it was a pretty good gig. And yeah, but that second DUI, crashed all that. So that was the first job that I got fired from, and at the time, I brushed it off, and I was I had the attitude, well, I can do better somewhere else anyways, that's no big a deal. And, as alcoholics, that's what we do. We try to rationalize when things like that happen. And that's what I did. And so I had a house in Salina, and I was right in the middle of remodeling it actually when I got fired. And so I cashed out all my savings that I'd built up with Marathon, which was a huge mistake, and finished remodeling my house and used the rest of the money to party. And I moved to Columbus with a friend that lived in Columbus. And I found work down there. I did some ATM repair for a while, and then I got on with Bell and Howell, and I progressed pretty quickly with Bell and Howell, and that was a good gig. I ended up getting into a salaried position with them, um, and I had a house built in Galloway, and and then I went in and put my touches on it and finished the basement and stuff like that. But things were going pretty good, and I had a run in Columbus. I decided to go to a bar called Lucky's. I don't know if anybody knows Lucky's in Hilliard, but I was I was on a pretty good run that night, and I was drinking liquor. And I went out to my truck, and it was cold out. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and so it was cold out. And I went out there and started my truck, and I was sitting in it, and I was debating whether or not to try to drive home or not. And I basically passed out at the wheel. I had the car in drive with my foot on the brake, and somebody called it in, and so I got arrested, and I had to spend the night in Franklin County Jail. Not fun. Franklin County Jail is not a fun place to go. Um, so my parents were in town because of the holiday. My sister lived in Hilliard with her husband and kids, So I had to call them to come pick me up and get me out of jail on Thanksgiving weekend. So yeah, that was fun having to go through all that. And but Columbus, other than that incident, Columbus was pretty good to me. I didn't really have too much trouble in Columbus. Um, but as things went by over the years, um, my drinking progressed. I ended up getting transferred out to South Dakota for a few years for work, and my drinking really picked up out in South Dakota. And I'm really thankful that I didn't have additional problems out in South Dakota because there was nobody out there to bail me out. I had friends that I had made out there, and I'm sure that I probably could have called on them and possibly gotten some help, but thankfully I didn't have to do that. But at that point, I was close to about a case a day of beer, and I was drinking Crown Royal, and I used to mix my Crown Royal with Mountain Dew. That was my favorite mixed drink, and I uh, I was able to do my job. I was, what we consider a high functioning alcoholic. Um, but I was real moody, and I would go to work and I'd be, real testy. And well, what ended up happening, I didn't get fired from that job, but they didn't renew their service contract, so I had to find a new place to go. Um, so they had an opening up in Rochester, New York. So I packed up all my stuff in January in South Dakota and drove with a hauler on the back to Rochester, New York, and it was in the single digits, and it was freezing rain and snowing, and I'm driving this big ass U-Haul, and it was not fun. That was one of the worst trips I've ever made. And the apartment that I got sight unseen. I just got it online because that's the way I had to do it. And I got there and was not happy with what I saw and had to move into, but it was what it was. I had to do what I had to do. And so I started working there in Rochester, and um, I worked in what's the name of the city? Well, I lived outside of Rochester, in a little canal town. They have a lot of little canal towns because the Miami Erie system starts up there. There's a lot of little canal towns, and they're really cool little towns. And the one I lived in, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a neat little area. And I would have to drive into Rochester for work, and the highway system there is just it's confusing. And in the wintertime, it's even worse because then you got to deal with the road conditions. And if you're not in the proper lane at the right time, you're going to get lost pretty easily. And that started happening, and it didn't really help that I was drinking a little bit before I went to work. Um, so I, on multiple occasions, was late coming into work, and I was getting into hot water with the customer. I was getting into hot water with my boss, and I had some shoulder problems. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna get my shoulder operated on. I'm gonna take a break. So that's what I did. My boss called me and said, well, the client doesn't want you to come back after shoulder surgery. I said, okay, well, I don't really want to go back anyways. And so that was that. I went on disability for a little bit and found a position down in Indianapolis with the same company. And so I moved to Indianapolis, and I actually liked Indianapolis. Um, but my drinking didn't slow down. I was doing the same shit in Indianapolis I was doing out in Rapid City as I was doing up in Rochester. So change of environment wasn't doing anything for me. I thought it maybe would every time I'd move. I thought, well, a new start, fresh start, but I was still doing the same stuff. And so, my work kind of suffered as a result. And long story short, I ended up leaving that job voluntarily. Um, they came out with a separation package, they called it. So anybody that was on disability uh, was offered this package because they were just trying to clean up stuff, on their end, and so I took it. It was a pretty good deal that it was almost like a severance package. So um, I took it, and then I just said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I moved back to Mercer County, and that's when a lot of my problems really started. And that was right around 2016, 17, somewhere around there. And so I came back to Mercer County. Um, I I got a place. I worked at Crown. I got in with Crown pretty quick. Um, but the drinking had gotten to the point where um, I just wasn't able to do it anymore. Um, I'd done it for so many years, and I was getting to the point where I was getting tired, and I was getting beat down. Um, I was getting depressed, uh, and I had an okay thing going with Crown, and they were working with me, and um, I just and one day I just decided I wasn't going to go back to work, and so I just quit going to work, and that's one of the shittiest ways to leave a job, but that's what I did, and I just went into a bender and just drank and drank and drank and drank, and I don't even know how many days it went for, and my mom ended up. I wasn't answering my phone either. And so my mom ended up getting a hold of my landlord and getting a key, and walked into the apartment, and there I was in my recliner, passed out with just beer cans, all around me, and um, the cat litter box hadn't been cleaned in quite a while, and um, things were just not good. So um, I ended up getting out of that apartment, and I thought the right thing to do was to move in with Mom for a while, maybe try to get my shit straight, but that didn't work. Um, I was out running around, going to the clubs. I sold my house in Columbus. I was renting it out the whole time I was out in South Dakota and up in New York and Indiana. And the renters, they did kind of a number on it. And so I was a little pissed off about that because it was a nice house and I put a lot of work into it. And but we all know how renters are. Um, so I ended up selling that house, and I took the proceeds and partied. And so yeah, I pissed away all that money on drinking, and in the process picked up 3 DUIs pretty quickly, a couple years apart each, and that just added to my repertoire of DUIs. I'm one of those people that thinks they're a good driver when they're drunk, and so yeah, I don't know my total. I know it's at least 7. Could be 8 or 9. I've got all my B&B records, but if anybody's really looked at their B&B records, it's kind of confusing how they lay everything out. So um, some of them are kind of incomplete. Some of them I don't know if it goes back before I was 18. I don't know, but I know there's at least 7 on there. But the important thing is that the last 3 that I got, I could have really got, it could have been a felony because they occurred within 10 years, and in Ohio, 3 DUIs in 10 years is a bad thing. So I ended up getting a 5-year license suspension. I had to do 30 days in jail. It could have been worse. Um, I didn't have to pay too much in fines. The judge was pretty lenient with me on that because I wasn't working. So she, cut me a little bit of a break on that. But I'm still dealing with that suspension. I got a little ways to go on that yet. But what happened ultimately was I'd gotten to a point where I pretty much isolated myself in my room, in my bedroom. I had a TV in there. I had a warm bed. Um, Mom, she would provide food if I wanted it. I didn't eat much because I was drinking. That's where I got all my calories from. Um, I wasn't losing any weight. I was actually gaining weight because I was drinking so much beer. But I would isolate in my room all day long, all night long. The only time I'd come out was to go up and get cigarettes or beer or use the restroom or maybe grab a bite to eat. I might have been eating like once a week or something like that. But I just sat in my room and drank. And I did that for several months. And I finally got to the point where I looked in the mirror one night and I hadn't shaved, I hadn't taken care of myself, um, and what was looking back at me I didn't like. And I remember very clearly, even though I was drunk, I went out and I talked to Mom and I just told her I can't. That was my breaking point. Told her I couldn't do it anymore. Um, I was I was just totally defeated. I felt worthless, helpless, defeated, tired. You name all those different things that we talk about in our meetings and stuff. I was feeling every one of those things. And so I set it up. I arranged everything myself with Woodhaven down in Dayton. And I called them in the evening and they said, "Can you be here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.?" And I was like, whoa, that's a little too fast for me. But I said, yeah, sure, I'm ready. Well, got up the next morning and I wasn't ready to go. So first thing I did was I went out in the garage and started chugging beers. And I went back in. I tried to lay down, and Mom wasn't going to have no part of it. My sister came home. She wasn't going to have no part of it, and they kept dragging me out of bed, and it was a back and forth battle. And they threw some clothes in some garbage bags, and eventually we got on the road. We got there an hour late, but we got down there. And best decision I ever made. My plan, I don't know what time it is. Oh, I have a little bit of time yet. My plan was to go down and get detoxed and come back home. Um, so that was the mindset going into treatment. It was a 90-day program, and I was like, I'm not going to be here for 90 days. There's no way I can do 90 days in a program. Most programs are 30 days or 60 days. Well, I got in there, and they doped me up pretty good, and so I don't remember much of my detox period. I was in detox for 2 weeks, which from what I understand, that's pretty long, actually. But I was in detox, and I don't know, while I was in there, when I got there and I was there for maybe a few days, I I felt this kind of peace come over me, kind of like this calmness. I didn't have to worry about what was going on the outside, and I felt safe. And I decided I was going to stick around for a little bit. And I thought, well, I'll stick around for another week. And I kind of kept doing that as time would go by, and another week would go by, and I said, well, maybe I'll stay another week. Just see what's going on, and talking to the counselors and stuff like that. And they started calling me Stick and Stay Steve because I always kept saying I was going to leave, and then I would stay. And I ended up staying, and I ended up staying for the full 90 days. Um, and I had an experience late. I was due to finish my program there, and I got really sick. I picked up pneumonia, and I got they had to send the squad to come pick me up and take me to the hospital. Um, and I was really sick with pneumonia. I was in the hospital for 4 days, and it was Christmas Day was when I got put in the hospital. So that's how I spent my Christmas in 22. So, but that scared the bejesus out of me, and that whole experience really brought me closer to God. and my faith and my spirituality um, really started to come together at that point, because there were just too many things happening that I couldn't really explain. And once I got home, I got into the House of Hope. Um, since I'd had pneumonia, they had me on steroids, and I'm bipolar. They had my meds all mixed up, so I was manic anyways when I got out, which is like I was manic, like flying all over the place. Put the steroids on top of that, I couldn't. I would be awake for days. I couldn't sleep. So I was in the House of Hope, and I drove those people crazy. They kicked me out after 8 days. Um, so I went to Mom's. Wasn't my choice, my first choice, but I did. Things didn't go well. Everybody knows that knows me. Um, but once we got things figured out, and I got better physically and mentally. I got in with the program. I got in with AA. Started getting involved, and started working the program. And um, that first step, I had to admit that I was powerless and that my life had become unmanageable. It was obvious my life was unmanageable. Um, I'd lost everything. You know, the only thing I had left was my car and my boat, and a little bit of furniture. Um, so compared to what I had, say like back when I was in Columbus doing well, I didn't have, I lost all that stuff. But poor me, right? But that's what alcoholism does. It takes away everything. And and I finally had to come to the realization that I was powerless over alcohol, and that was a hard one for me, because I tried so many different things and so many different times to be a normal drinker, or to somehow be able to control it. And when I drink, I can't control myself, and that's what got me, because it's how I react to things when I drink, and I just don't react in a rational manner. There's so many insane things. Gary told me I'm supposed to do a 2-hour lead, so I'm just going to keep rambling, but no, just kidding. Um, but that's what happened, and I started coming to these rooms, and I started listening to you guys, and I started listening to my sponsors, and I went through some of the steps, and I got great people behind me, and I respect all these guys that have helped me, and I see new people, and I hear what they have to say, and I take all that in, and I use it to help me, and I like helping other people as well. I've had the opportunity to do a little bit of that, and um, once I got that first step down, I was able to move on, and I don't have to have all that lying and covering up. And I remember, I would accumulate a garbage bag full of cans, empty cans, in my bedroom in a matter of a couple of days, and you know, I thought I had Mom duped. I didn't have her duped. She knew. She knew. Well, I'd run out to my car. Where are you going? Oh, I need cigarettes. She knew I didn't need cigarettes. You know, if she, if I'd have told her that, I'd have been smoking 20 packs a day. Um, I was going uptown to get beer or get liquor. And I would drive around with a pint of liquor in my front seat. I mean, how stupid is that? I went up one time. That's how I got one of my DUIs. I went up to one of the C stores one night, and it was about 12:30 at night, and I ran out of beer. And to an alcoholic, when you run out of beer, you're like, oh my God, what am I can't make it through the night. What am I going to do? So I ran uptown, and there's a sheriff's car sitting there, and there's a deputy sheriff inside the store. Well, what does dumbass me do? I walk in there and get a case of beer. Well, he smells it on me. Of course he does, because I'm drunk as a skunk. You know, that's the insanity of it. That we just don't think. We're just it's just so stupid when you look back on it. But that's the stupid stuff that happened, and it happened, and I can look back on it now and say, God, I'm so thankful that I don't have to do or worry about that stuff anymore, because I've got this program and I've got these people, and and life has gotten so much better. And I'm not gonna lie, with the good comes the bad, and I'm dealing with some adversity right now, and but I've been taught some things in this program, work a solution, keep a positive attitude, um, have faith. And if I didn't have all that stuff, I'd be a wreck right now. But you know, despite all the things that maybe aren't going my way right now, it doesn't matter because it's going to get better. I just have to have faith that things are going to work out, and better things are down the road. But all I got to worry about is today, and that makes it palatable, I don't have to get all worked up and think about drinking or just giving up, because that was my MO for a long time. Whenever I faced adversity, I would just say F it and just drink my way into oblivion, so I wouldn't have to think about it or worry about it. Just drink till I pass out, and then I didn't have to worry about it. So I think that's pretty much my story, and I think I pretty much covered what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And life's not too bad these days. I can't really complain too much. So thank you all for listening.
I'm Gary with alcohol. That was a good message, Steve. I see life growth in you. I'm saying it's just we got to work through these problems and we get them, you know. And customary, we're just opening up for anybody who wants to make a comment.
Richard Alcoholic.
Hey, Richard.
Thanks, Steve. I can relate to a couple of things that you're talking about, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I didn't know each night when I went out and got drunk, I didn't know whether I was going to be a happy drunk or a pissed off one. And I used to miss Mountain Dew with my wild turkey. That was my go-to. I used to put it in my Camelback when I was in the Marine Corps. Just mix them two of them together and put them in my Camelback and walk around. They say hydrate. I'd take a sip. And yeah, I wasn't very hydrated to that. But you talked about the solution, and so that was what I needed to hear tonight. Some of the things that you said was what I really needed to hear tonight. One day at a time. Just take care of today, and tomorrow take care of itself. And everything. Thank you, my friend. I'll pass.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
I'm Steve, alcoholic.
Steve.
Great lead. Great lead. I loved it. A couple of things I relate with was that part about where did I step over the line? I personally believe that just because you drink the first time or second time, I don't think that's it. I would say that stepping over the line is when you when you drink more and more, it becomes a problem. It becomes more important. And I remember my last 7 years, I was in the military. Not last 7 years, but the last 7 years from 82 to 89 was probably the worst. When my drinking got the worst. And I became a 7-day-a-week drunk. And I know that. And the bottle was the most important. That was the most important thing in my life. And so much, and I remember so much of the insanity that I went through. That some of the things that I did, I don't even talk about, except with a good friend that I that I know and done it and lives down in Georgia. But I did have one DUI in my life, and unfortunately it was here in Mercer County, Montezuma. But and yeah, but pretty much what you said you did. I never really went broke, but I did drink away a lot of money. Drank a lot of weight. I drank a lot of self-respect away. I lost a lot of stuff. And when I finally got into these rooms, got into rehab, started going to these meetings, getting in these rooms, and sobered up, that's when life changed for me. Um, I mean, you know, I got out of the military, came back here, lived here, been back here since 1992, and went back out, used the GI Bill, learned a trade, and you know, and that's what I did with myself. I grew up. I'm not perfect. I made mistakes, and there's still some skeletons in the closet that I have to deal with. But today I'm not sitting in some bar sitting in a bar or whatever, drinking because of whatever I wanted to do. I'm just, I relate to other people in the program because of what they went through and what you went through, and I like hearing what other people have to say, what they went through. We all have, at one time, we all end up, anybody that comes to this program, somehow, some way, alcohol became a problem. Could have been maybe you could have one drink a night, that'd be it. But eventually what happened was it became a problem. You had it, and you came here to get help, and if you stayed here, hopefully, and worked the program and did what you had to do, hopefully, and eventually you grow and you become a member of society again. You can contribute. You become human again. You grow up. That's it. I get it. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Steve.
Hey, my name's Tom, alcoholic. I too remember crossing that line, and I was like 5 or 6. I had been sipping alcohol and tasting alcohol, but I remember walking up we lived on a farm and I was gathering eggs. Walking home, I remembered what alcohol did for me a few times. I was like, oh, I haven't done that in a long time. And then I turned my will and life over to care alcohol. I did everything for alcohol. And I can relate to your lead. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Tom.
Kevin, I'm not Paul.
Kevin.
Thanks, Steve. Good lead. I've heard you, I know once or maybe a couple times, and and thing is, you got involved. You helped us out over at Fort Recovery, chairing meetings, and doing some service work and stuff, and and that's what it's about. You got to get involved and be a part of, And for me, I was in and out of this program for a long time before I ever got sober, but I never got involved. All I wanted I come get that paper signed and let me back out, and I can go uptown and drink for a little while, And today I understand why I couldn't stay sober, but a good lead, and thanks for doing service work and helping out, and that's what it's about. But there's one thing that I don't understand for the life of me, is why anybody would ruin a good drink of whiskey by putting Mountain Dew. I don't understand that, but thanks for your lead. Thanks for being my friend.
Thanks, Kevin.
I'm Andrew, recovering
Andrew.
I wanna thank you, Steve, for sharing with us, and I appreciate it. Just thanks for being my friend.
Thanks, Andrew.
Anybody else?
I'm Brad, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Brad.
Brad. I wanna thank you, Steve, for sharing your story. I don't think I've heard you before, I'm not real sure. I could relate to so much from the beginning to the end. I mean, I wasn't adopted, but the whole, the priest and the server boy, altar boy and all that stuff, and then I never made all the changes, geographical changes that you made. But I think the part that I loved about your story the most is all the shit you went through and all that stuff was never enough, you know, and I can relate to that. And then when you looked in the mirror and then you decided that you were gonna go to that treatment, but still you were reserved about that, and you were at that treatment center, and you said that peace come over you. That's when you turned your will over, you know, and that's the same way I was when I come in. Once I turned my will over, and I didn't worry about stuff, it was just, everything was better, and it keeps getting better. But it's easy to take that will back, you know, I want everything my way. Thanks for helping me stay sober again tonight, and thanks for being my friend. Thanks, Steve.
Brad. Brad.
Anybody else?
No.
All right, Steve, you wanna close us with the Lord's Prayer?
Who keeps us safe?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory forever. Amen. Keep coming back, and work for the work.
Some people say it sucks if you don't. Oh, yeah.
No, buddy.
Good lead, man.
It was interesting.